are about half of the registered participants, but we will start now. Good morning, everyone. Very warm welcome on behalf of Portugal Social Innovation to this workshop on organizational diagnosis for social and environmental purpose organizations, developed in partnership with IES Social Business School. Today's session takes place within the framework of the European project BIRDS, Building Innovation and Resilience for the Development of Social Innovation Ecosystems, which bring together 4 countries, Portugal, France, Spain, and Sweden, united by a shared objective to strengthen social innovation ecosystems across Europe. During this workshop, we will explore a highly practical tool, the organizational self-assessment model developed in Portugal, which has already been used in the framework of our capacity building financial instrument. As you may know, Portugal Social Innovation is a public initiative launched by the Portuguese government in 2014 with a unique mission to mobilize European funds to strengthen the social innovation and social entrepreneurship ecosystem in Portugal. It was the first initiative of its kind in Europe, designed specifically to use ESF resources to support innovative solutions to social and societal challenges, to develop the skills and capacity of mission-driven organizations, to stimulate partnerships between the social sector, public sector, and social investors, and to promote new financing models such as social impact bonds and other outcome-based mechanisms. Over the past financing period in Portugal 2020, Portugal Social Innovation supported 698 projects and helped consolidate the national ecosystem of social innovation involving public institutions, municipalities, social organizations, academia, business, and impact investors. Today, the initiative continues to design and test innovative financial instruments in the current framework program, Portugal 2030. We are supporting 461 projects, which represent 84 million euros of committed investments, along with the 20 million investment from social investors. Our participations in the BIRDS projects reflects our commitment to share knowledge and learning with European partners, contributing with practical experience and helping other countries to explore how EU funds can better support impactful and sustainable social innovation. So our topic for today is the self-assessment tool. The self-assessment tool is designed to help organizations to reflect on their capabilities, maturity, and sustainability, enable them to grow with purpose, confidence, and real impact. To present the tool, we have Carlos Azevedo, one of the most respected and experienced voices in Portugal in the field of social innovation and impact measurement. Carlos is a consultant and impact researcher currently collaborating with the UNES Social Innovation Center at Católica Business School of Business and Economic. He brings extensive academic and hands-on experience supporting mission-driven organizations in developing strategies, sustainability models, and impact evaluation system. In recent years, he has worked closely with international social innovation networks, always with a clear perspective on how to connect purpose, investment, and measurable change. Today, Carlos will share with us his reflections on hybrid organizations, the challenge and economic opportunities, management and hybrid business models, and regarding the impact analysis, he will present the self-assessment tool for hybrid organizations. So, Carlos, it is a true pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. And I also thank to Yes Social Business School team for the partnership and for leading today's session. And thank you all for joining us and contributing with your time and interest. I hope you make the most of this space to learn, to exchange, and to inspire one another, because it is from this exchange that social innovation truly emerges. So thank you and have a great session. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Louisa. It's well, I'm a little bit overwhelmed by this introduction, but thank you for your kind words. It's a pleasure to be amongst you today and share a little bit my perspectives on social innovation, hybrid organizations, but also the self-assessment tool that we developed developed in partnership with Portugal Social Innovation. It has been an amazing journey so far. And I think the self-assessment tool, in fact, I would say that has the potential to be a game changer when it comes to capacity building. So I'm going to share a little bit our reflections on why the self-assessment tool was and is super important for the ecosystem, but also, you know, uh, the foundations, the theoretical foundations behind the self-assessment tool. The idea is for us to have a conversation more than, you know, just a session where I'm just presenting a couple of ideas, concepts, and even preconceptions that I have. But I would like to have your contribution if possible as well. Comments, questions are super welcomed. So feel free to jump in every time you feel like doing it. So as Luisa mentioned, my name is Carlos Azevedo. In fact, my full name is Carlos Miguel Pelicano Borges Teixeira de Azevedo. It's like a super big name, which is quite common in Portugal. Um, but so I work for Católica Lisbon School of Business and Economics, which is one of the biggest business schools in the country, alongside with Nova School of Business and Economics, for example. We're one of the schools of the Catholic University in Portugal, which is the biggest university in the country with campuses across the country. Actually, we have four different campuses in the north, center, and also in the Lisbon area, and many areas of expertise as well. We range from, you know, a medical school to a business school, a human sciences school as well, a law school. So it's quite multidisciplinary as an university, which is, you know, both an advantage but also a disadvantage in the sense that the university is super big, so sometimes a little bit more conservative than it should be. But so within the Católica Lisbon School of Business and Economics, I'm the research manager, which is basically the scientific director of one of our research applied research centers. In this case, is the research center that we have for social innovation, and one of our uh, key roles in the ecosystem is basically to you know, to foster social innovation through applied knowledge. So one of the things that we do is being the interface of the school with the community. We try to translate academic knowledge into very practical tools, frameworks that will serve the ecosystem. And one of the projects that we have, it's actually funded by Portugal Social Innovation, and we were discussing it with Luisa just before the session started. And we are one of the things that we are planning to do is to launch a book on scaling social innovation, since there's quite a few research on this topic. So we want to actually boost the discussion around scaling social innovations. And on top of it, so I'm also one of the co-founders of Yes Social Business School, which is the partner of Portugal Social Innovation for this project. And basically, Yes is a grassroots business school in the sense that we train social entrepreneurs and impact organizations. We help them to, to set up their businesses, to improve their business models as well. And we started in Portugal back in 2008, but then interestingly we started scaling our activity back in 2015 by chance. We went to the MENA region, so we start working with Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco, and then Lebanon, which was an amazing experience. Then Mozambique, so in Africa as well, and Mongolia in Asia, which opened the door to China, for example. And in recent years, we worked with the European Investment Bank Institute, which is the philanthropic arm of the Investment Bank, European Investment Bank, which basically it's the bank of the EU, and one of the things that we've done with them was to strengthen the most prominent social innovations in Europe through one of the competitions they were running called the Social Innovation Tournament. So we were part of the coalition that actually helped them to facilitate the alumni network. We also run a boot camp for the finalists. There's a couple of things. I would like just to share one story about what IES, what we have been doing, especially in countries such as Lebanon. But so a couple of years ago, so we went to Tunisia, to Tunis, to run a social innovation boot camp. And by the way, I can also give you a resource. So we have a methodology to help social entrepreneurs to set up their businesses. And so everything is now in a book called The Social Entrepreneur's Guide to Changing the World. You can download it for free. I can just, upload the link in a bit. And so we were there to run this boot camp, and I met this girl called Samira. So Samira, she's Palestinian, and she's around 23, 24 years old. So she moved to Syria as a Palestinian refugee. And as you know, the civil war in Syria broke in 2015. So put yourself in her shoes. Like Samira, she's moving to Syria, to Aleppo, and Aleppo was devastated by the civil war. So she moved to Aleppo. She's in Aleppo as a Palestinian refugee. She never got the Syrian citizenship or the visa to be like a legal, to have the legal residency. So she's there, and the war broke, and then she feels like, I'm completely lost. I don't know how to get out of this. So she was telling this story where, for example, her brother left one day to get some food, and he came back without an arm, just because he stepped into a landmine, and he didn't have the time to run away from it, so it exploded, and he lost an arm. So he went back home, and she was super happy because it came back home at least. But the interesting part of the story, of course, this is a very sad story, but there's also some hope in it, in the sense that she was telling me that her and her family, they created a human power generator for the whole community. So all Aleppo was off grid, no electricity, no power, like no means to cook, for example. And she created a human power generator fueled by human poop. This is incredible as a story because you can tell that the power of social entrepreneurship, especially in this kind of situations where people are actually at risk, social entrepreneurship brings hope as well. So it's a story that is very close to my heart. I'm still in touch with Samira. She's alive, healthy, and she had a baby now, so which is super cool. But it also shows the power of social innovation in the face of wars or you know uh, environmental catastrophes. And just to highlight one of the things that motivates me to do what I do every day is like people like Samira. Okay, just to share this story because it's someone that like I bumped into Samira in 2016 in Tunis, and it's a story that I never, and it's thanks to Yesh and the network that we created. Okay, so introductions are done. I'm going to share my screen so we can start our discussion. Just tell me if you're able to see my screen. Yes, is it working? Perfect. So
Yes.
this is the agenda for today. I have three topics to cover with you, if you're okay with it. But please, I would like to hear your feedback. So I would like also to share the ideas that I have about, creating an impact, either social or environmental, being also an economic opportunity. So it's not only a moral imperative; it's more than that. And sometimes we forget about this, the arguments that are behind this strong statement. Second, it's managing hybrid organizations. In particular, why is important to have self-assessment tools, capacity building programs, and I think this is grounded on these reflections on how hybrid organizations should be managed, and the roadblocks that they are facing today. And finally, I'm going to introduce you to the self-assessment tool that we developed with along with Portugal Social Innovation. Does it work for you? I don't know. I feel like everyone has their camera off, so I don't know if um, everyone is okay with this. And cool. So impact economy. So my question is, and that's the point I'm trying to make, or I will try to make at least, is it creating societal impact also? Sorry for the typo. An economic opportunity. Um, And my answer is yes, and probably one of the biggest economic opportunities of our times. But I'm going to tell you why in a bit. But before, I would like to go back, to step back a little bit, and to show you what the status quo, the conventional wisdom is telling us. So, as you know, by the way, have you read this? This book from Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, before? No interaction.
I guess.
No, I haven't.
You haven't, but the book was it's well known, especially amongst the economists and philosophers as well. But there's one expression that became really well known uh, thanks to this book. You know which expression I'm talking about, or you don't? I guess we have a couple of managers or economists here, maybe.
Mm. The invisible hand of the markets.
Exactly. Thank you. The invisible hand of the market, which relies on this argument that people are selfish. They pursue their self-interest. And by doing so, they allocate resources where they can get more benefits from. And in a market economy, this happens where we can fulfill people's needs. Otherwise, like it doesn't make sense to produce like food or so I'm producing the food to those that have specific needs, but also the means to pay for it. And the market is this invisible hand that is going to make, even if everyone pursues their self-interest, of course, they're going to allocate resources efficiently. So there's no need for governments. That's the main argument. So if people are selfish, they want to capture value from society. So I'm gonna act upon those opportunities. So if I can capture value, I'm gonna do something. Otherwise, I won't. Because in this cost benefit analysis, it's not worth it. And if I want to capture value, if you want, I want to get more money in my pocket, so I need to activate needs. I'm going to give you an example. So let's take the iPhone as an example. So I guess no one asked Steve Jobs to launch an iPhone, right? But what happened when the iPhone was launched? It's an educated guess, or not at all, and that's okay. After the iPhone was launched, everyone started needing an iPhone, right? So there's like a virtuous circle or vicious circle, depending on the perspective, where the product itself or the service is both activating the needs, but also fulfilling the need. Um, and by doing so, I need to set up a company as an envelope for the product or service because it's the only way I have, legally speaking, to capture value because I know who the owners are of a company, so I can distribute dividends. I don't have the non-distribution clause that is quite common in non-profit organizations, right? And in order to maximize value capture, what I need is to control every single force in the market. For example, from controlling suppliers, clients, raising barriers to entry, such as patents. Let's take Nespresso as an example. They got a patent for 5 years, which means they become incumbents. But being incumbents, they were quite close to become a monopolist, able to raise prices, to manipulate prices, and of course, capturing more value. Okay. And we know that an incumbent has always a competitive advantage. So that's everything we are taught in a business school. This is economics 101, right? But our role here as Portugal Social Innovation, as Yes Social Business School, even as Catholic Lisbon School of Business, and I guess everyone attending this workshop is to challenge these assumptions. So the way I challenge these assumptions is going back to Adam Smith and a tiny book that he wrote just before the Wealth of Nations, but actually his masterpiece, and he died working on it, called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, where he said, like, no, people are altruistic, in fact. And by being altruistic, they care about others, their families, their community, society as a whole. We can add a second argument from Stuart Mill, where he said, like, society will evolve until a point where it's impossible to keep on pushing the production frontiers. And what's going to happen is people, in order to innovate, they will start to solve societal issues. So, in fact, people are altruistic. According to Adam Smith, for example, being altruistic is when someone is hoping to get a compliment from um, an impartial referee that some of us call God. So we want to get complimented by God. That's the. In order to do so, we need to do, like, um, we need to create value for others. And so that's the first assumption that we can challenge. If people are altruistic, they care about value creation. What's the difference between value capture and value creation? By value creation, I mean, okay, we can create value and capture a part of this value, but there's an intangible value, if we care about society, for example, that is almost impossible to monetize. Using the economic jargon, externalities. Have you heard about externalities before, both negative and positive? This is a super irrelevant and important concept. Do you know? I guess Barbara is saying she heard about externalities before. I guess so. It's like the ripple effects of everything that we do, right? But most of them are almost impossible to monetize. I'm going to give you an example of a positive externality that it's really hard to monetize. So I guess most of you know Muhammad Yunus. So he was Nobel Peace Prize laureate back in 2006 because it took millions of people out of poverty. And Yunus, so we set up the Grameen Bank, called the Bank of the Poor. And so just because, when he was walking from to his job at the University of Dhaka, he would bump into a lot of, poor people. And he was really, he was really, he was struggling to see how those poor people actually they were working, but impossible to increase their income and to get out of poverty. So one of the things that he did actually was researching the issue, and he realized that those people they became slaves just because they got loans from loan sharks with a 120% interest rate a day, which means that every day they were getting poorer and poorer. So his idea was just to replace those loans with a regular interest rate, about 3%, which is okay. The default rate dropped to 2%. It took people out of poverty. Why? One, because it challenged the status quo, basically. Instead of lending money to men, we start lending money to women. Instead of asking for a collateral, he was just asking women to create like peer groups so they could support each other. And instead of lending money to rich people, he was just trusting poor people. So these people, they start setting up their businesses, creating new jobs. Women were even creating more surplus. By creating more surplus, they were investing in their children's education, breaking the poverty cycle. So this is the positive externality, almost impossible to monetize because I cannot predict the extent of my positive externalities. So that's why, for example, in the conventional wisdom, we are taught to ignore externalities unless the government makes makes it mandatory to internalize them. Okay, I don't know if you bear with me still. Because my question is, where are there those externalities hidden on societal problems? So that's why, should I create a product or service to actually address this problem? It depends, but it could be a product, a service, a movement. And then the question is, now I need your contribution, in fact. So should I set up a company to make sure that the solution works? What do you think? Any guess who wants to share? How many people do we have, Luisa, by the way? Because I cannot.
20.
20. Okay. This is a good group. So it's cozy and small. But anyways, I don't know if people are willing to participate.
Can you please repeat the question?
Of course. So, for example, let's say we set up a solution, and what I was trying to explain is the solution is a mean to solve and address a problem, a societal problem, taking into account that our motivation is value creation. Okay, the solution can be a product, a service, or a movement. And my next question is: should I set up a company as the legal framework for that solution? We have two options. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Ingrid.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, there are different ways to go about it. I guess, I mean, what we in the social economy sector, I mean, there's a lot of voluntary-based solutions, of course, but also definitely, I mean, we work with social enterprises, and they try to find and use the ways of running a company, and within find an economic model um, to combine the value creation to society with an economic value creation. So yeah, I mean, that's what we see and what people try to do and are doing. But I mean, I'm currently mostly in my head now with involved in housing, community-led housing and housing
Okay.
cooperatives, and people locally trying to solve and housing crisis, or like needs for housing for young, elderly, and so on, rural and also urban. I mean, it is a challenge because
It is.
I mean, these new community-led housing models can definitely create a lot of, like, it can really meet these societal challenges. It can really create a lot of additional value, more than economic. It can increase health. It reduces loneliness. It creates a lot of positive impact to the local community and so on. But of course, yeah, it is a challenge to do this as like finding a business model that is viable and so on, because yeah, it's not always, and I think especially the yeah, in some cases it's clear that the if it's, for example, the local municipality, the local society overall that gets the benefit a lot from this,
Yeah, exactly.
then it maybe sometimes there needs to be also some kind of more active support from like a municipality or like public body in some cases. But yeah, I mean there's a lot of social entrepreneurship trying to do this, of course.
Yeah. No,
I don't
thank
know
you for
if this
sharing.
was
Where
yeah,
are you? Where are you from? So you're from Sweden, right?
Sweden, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like you have been testing a lot of housing solutions, I guess, and community housing. So I saw a documentary about it a couple of months ago,
Mm,
and I think it's interesting because in Portugal right now, as you know, is a really hot topic.
mm,
There's a lot of solutions coming up and popping up basically everywhere. So it could be of interest to share your experiences with Portugal as well.
yeah,
Because, for example, one of our impact funds, so an impact VC
yeah.
right now, they are
Mm.
launching
The housing
um,
first.
exactly
Mm,
Housing
mm,
First Fund, which
mm,
is interesting.
mm,
But also like a lot of other funds focusing on housing and new types of housing solutions. So it's
mm,
super cool. But going back to your idea, I think it's exactly what I was thinking of. Basically, like it can be a company, it can be a non-profit, it can be a cooperative, it can be a more democratic type of organization, such as an association, or even like a more centralized one, such as a foundation. Which is interesting because it brings us a wide range of solutions. But my main idea is like the governance model should be at the service of the business model and the impact model and not the other way around. And that's a really hard discussion, for example, to have with the public entities because they are very, skeptical about market organizations, let's say regular market organizations, creating an impact. So, but I think that the governance model usually is like kind of a way to avoid mission drift, and at the same time is a way to ensure quality. So I'm going to give you two examples um, of the point I'm trying to make. So one of them is Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is a now crowdsourced platform. It's very democratic in the way it operates. So it makes sense to be a nonprofit because the democratic side of the legal framework is at the service of the business model, and they also rely on donations, for example. Even though right now they're they're starting to be outdated by AI. So another solution, which is a Portuguese one, is Colored, which is a color code for colorblind people. As you know, 350 million people are colorblind. This affects men mostly. And it's really hard for them to navigate into the system. For example, according to the data Colorado has, 80% of colorblind people get bullied at school, for example, or it's impossible to them to buy clothes properly. So there's a couple of issues. Actually, it's a waterfall of issues right now in that particular case. But it's a simple color code. So it has a code for a symbol for yellow, blue, and red, and then black and white. So we can also bring the codes, the symbol together and identify like the secondary colors. So we can basically identify the whole palette of colors. And so they license the code for companies to use. they sell the use of the code, and it makes sense from an impact perspective, because if I don't sell the code, like we can, the way it's going to be applied, it's quite random. For example, I don't know, I prefer blue to red, so I'm gonna have an arrow up to for blue and an arrow down to red. Whereas, for example, other companies would do the opposite. So it's gonna get colorblind people confused. And if this is true, I need a team to make sure that the code is properly applied, and I need to centralize the quality control to make sure that everyone is using the code as it should be. So the only way that I have to centralize is by setting up a company. So what I'm trying to say is, depending on the business model and and how it locksteps with the impact model, the governance model should be like a consequence. Whereas, for example, sometimes here in Portugal, what we have is like public entities saying, I don't trust companies that are trying to set up solutions to address problems because they're market driven. No. So there are companies also creating value, and it's economically speaking, it makes sense for them to stay as a company. And it changes the way, of course, we look into competitive advantage. For example, I wrote an article about it because what I realized is, like, social innovations, they try to empower the system, to embed the solution into the system by creating new markets, by, for example, um, to to embody public policies. So there's a lot of way, a different possible end games. So just to wrap it up, we have a couple of myths about social innovation and impact. The first one is about disadvantaged people. It's not about judgments. It's about solving an issue. It's not about charity, it's about creating value. It's not only social activism, is to make something that actually will systemically change the problem. It's not corporate social responsibility, because it's about mitigating negative spillovers. Here we are talking about fostering a positive spillover. It's not only social economy, it's more of a convergent economy. And we have philanthropic business models like Wikipedia, and market-driven business models such as Colored. Sorry, Ingrid, do you have a comment or
Yes,
questions?
thank you. I just wanted to mention that in our ESF pre-study that we linked to the BIRDS project through our study visit to the conference that was held in Lisbon in June. In that pre-study, we tried to address these myths in a way, but maybe I think it's good that you make them more clear, because we were presenting an example of how our work integration social enterprise that Mikrofonden in Sweden has been financing, how this one was
Mhm.
growing for 10 years and being like really selling services to like larger companies within production and so on. And they were very successful. They got a lot of people into the labor market, into the working market, and into jobs, and from like reducing the cost for municipalities and so on. But still, the municipality did see it as like, you're a social enterprise, you're just supposed to take care of these people that we cannot handle in the municipality because they're too difficult. And they did not understand why and how they needed to pay for the service of tutoring and taking care of these people that were needing a lot of support to be able to come to a position where they could work. And also the work, the agency for work and so on in Sweden also were not covering like the payment for this service provided by the work integration social enterprises. The cost for this support needed for these people are not covered. So like as a result, and there was different aspects of course, but as a result this company had to be like closed down, and it was a big loss. It was the municipality lost like I mean there was a lot of people going back into unemployment from going from like yeah, having to get supported by the municipality, coming into work and employment, and then going back to that. So this was an example of, I think, from several aspects. The regular company that they were selling services to, they also thought, but you're a social company, you're a social enterprise. We do not need to pay you like a full price for your service because you're a social enterprise. You're like this is your like you're just supposed to do this. So we encountered several of these myths and how this actually caused like a social work integration social enterprise that was proving a lot of success, but that in it had to be closed down. So I would say like we really and we tried to kind of share a real life story on this in our pre-study, just to kind of show the results of like how these myths are causing, yeah, like how they hinder and not allows like this kind of companies to
True.
reach their full impact and potential. So yeah.
Exactly. No, no, I fully agree with what you're saying. I just would like to share a video that I think you should watch from this American social manager, let's say, called Dan Pallotta, and it's a TED talk about why. Um, the TED talk title is "Why is um, the way we look into nonprofits is deadly wrong?" I guess, but it's super important because actually is trying to identify all these myths because he ran out of business as well, just because he was getting too professional. Um, it's super important what you're saying. Another thing is basically it's one of the problems that I guess impact organizations are facing has to do with the business model itself. So sometimes we tend to use moral arguments instead of economic arguments. For example, our impact, the example you were giving, for example, where like you're creating more jobs, people are getting, they moving from being jobless to getting a job. So there's a lot of economic value on this. Like, for example, direct economic value. They will get less subsidies from the government. They will contribute more through taxes and social security contributions, for example. So there's economic value. And we need to make it tangible. We need to monetize this impact and use it as an economic argument. You know what I mean? So I think like sometimes we forget about this. That we discuss a lot about how to measure impact, but then what about monetizing it? I always like I had this a story in my mind all the time. A couple of years ago, the national train company in Portugal came to me and he told me like, you know what, I need your help to scout social innovations locally. Why? Because you know the railroads. Sometimes what happens is the train stops often out of the regular stops, just because people commit suicide on railroads. And by doing so, it affects also the business of the train company because they, you know, they need to ask for the help of the civil protection. They need to pay extra hours to their employees. They need to deal with clients and customers filing complaints. So there's a lot of issues from this to the company that affects the, you know, the bottom line. So what they were doing is they wanted to fund local social enterprises addressing mental health issues to prevent people from committing suicide, which has an effect on the bottom line. We need to be able to map out our stakeholders and also to understand what is the value we're creating to that specific community, because most likely we will be able to monetize it. So that's one of the things. And based on this, let's look at the data. And what I was telling you before is basically I truly believe that creating an impact is an economic opportunity. So every single organization has four sources of value: business, what they do; talent, like super important input; cost of capital, access to capital; and societal goodwill. All of them rely on impact. For example, if you look into the assets under management right now in Europe, 53% are already scrutinized under ESG criteria, so environmental, social, and governance criteria, which makes like the cost of capital go down for those companies scrutinized already under those criteria. 75% of millennials are already looking for purpose in their jobs, and they are willing to cut off their salaries for more purpose. So talent is looking for impact. 85% of impact organizations grew alone so this is from 2019, from the global report Purpose at Work from LinkedIn, against, for example, only 42% for regular organizations. So no, not purpose-driven organizations. And for example, the turnover of the workforce right now is super high. For example, 65% of the workforce today are keen to change their jobs every 3 years because they want new experiences, learning fast, they want to learn faster, etc. But this goes down if the purpose of the organization is clear as well. So what I'm saying is there's an opportunity for our organizations to grow, but there's also an opportunity for impact organizations to partner with private organizations. Social procurement is a way to do so, for example. And in Portugal, we have a good example of Café Joia, which is basically an organization that works with people with how is it called, Down syndrome. And so they are the workers of the solution. And that specific company is, for example, running the cafeteria of one of the biggest insurance companies in the country, AGH, and Cofidis, which is a financial institution. So what I'm trying to say is there's an opportunity for us to do so. We just need to be clear about our mission, our impact, and how to monetize it, using it as an economic argument. I'm just gonna tell you one last story about it, about how impact can actually make a difference. Um, I was working with a social entrepreneur in my hometown, Porto, and basically she had the idea of creating a martial arts academy at the core of a local slum, a neighborhood, a very sketchy neighborhood. And so she did it. She set up the martial arts academy, and but no one was willing to pay for it. So the kids, the young people attending the martial arts, were not able to pay for it. The parents neither. So basically, what was happening was like it has value because if you teach those young people how to behave, how to respect others, but also themselves, it's also about self knowledge. And what was happening, so no one was willing to pay for it. So they start going to stakeholders around, especially small restaurants, small businesses, asking for them to pay for scholarships for those young people. And their argument was both impactful but also an economic argument. If you pay those young people the scholarship for those young people attending this martial arts academy, you're going to reduce criminality and violence in the neighborhood, and you are the ones that are getting the economic benefit out of it because you're going to have more clients, less robberies. So it's up to you to know, and they start funding that specific venture locally. So they're used impact as an argument, as the value proposition, in fact. So this is a couple of articles that we wrote about. So I was working in at INSEAD a couple of years ago, which is the French business school, and I developed the research on competitiveness for hybrid organizations, and we also developed the tool to assess competitiveness that I can also send you. And I wrote an article about this idea of setting up a business that is both impactful and sustainable, and it's a framework that you can also use alongside with the social entrepreneur's guide that I mentioned earlier. So a couple of examples before moving forward. So this is Colored, as you can see, and the partnership with UNO, which is the most sold cards game in the world. So basically, UNO, it belongs to Mattel, the American company, and basically, the moment they got the license from Colorado, their sales grew 33%. So it's super cool because they reach out to a new target, and also people that are looking for these special collections were running for to the stores to get this new version. So it's also showing how it is possible actually through impact to increase your business bottom line. This is a Spanish company from Barcelona. I know that we have a lot of Spanish people attending this workshop, right? I don't know if you already stumbled into Netherlands from Javier. He's an amazing entrepreneur, by the way. He attended one of our workshops for the European Investment Bank Institute. He was a finalist. I think he won one of those competitions back in 2020, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, it's the question he was asking himself is, how can you get like blind people to travel more? Because it's almost impossible for them to navigate in a city where they they don't understand the language, for example. It's really hard to take public transportation, so you're reliant on someone else instead of being independent. So we created this kind of QR code, and by using your phone next to your chest, you can look. So you basically tell your phone where to go. It's gonna read the codes, and it's gonna take you to that place through public transportation or even walking. And it's an amazing. So it's everywhere in Barcelona now, Tokyo, for example, New York, and they start scaling deep, which is also interesting because they are using this code. For example, so if you go to the groceries to do groceries, for example, you will find the code on products such as Calyx products. So, for example, let's say that you're trying to do your groceries, you're looking for Calyx, and it's gonna tell you which row the product is placed on. So it's also good. Again, scaling deep. It's also good for people that don't know like other language. For example, I don't speak Japanese. Japanese people have a hard time speaking in English. So if I want to travel to Tokyo, I can use it as well. So it has a variety of users. So it's pretty cool. It has, of course, positive spillovers for those cities as well. They become more inclusive. This is a British example, jelly drops. So as you know, Alzheimer people, with some kind of diseases, such as Alzheimer, they tend not to drink a lot of water, which brings dehydration. So basically, uh, this accelerates the evolution of the disease. So what they come up with as an idea, it's a simple one. So you have these jelly drops that you can take. It's like a jelly, but it has water inside. And from people that were unable to drink water every day, they start drinking like 1 liter per day, even more sometimes, just by, having this solution. And it's interesting because the founder, his grandma was Alzheimer's. So he developed a solution to help his grandma, and then he started marketing it as well afterwards. And then the final one is a solution that I particularly love, called Specialist Turn from Denmark. Basically, Specialist Turn was co-founded by Torkel Sorna, a Danish guy. His kid was born with Asperger syndrome. So one day, so he started struggling with it, but he started researching, and he realized that most of them are actually off the labor market because the prejudice, etc. And so one day he entered his room and he saw like his youngest kid, which who is the one within the autistic spectrum, um, drawing the world map by heart with every single detail. And he thought to himself, like, he has an amazing skill, so I need to sell it. Like, that's what I need to make sure that my kid is gonna thrive. So it set up this business where basically it sells the talent of people like his kid, to big companies to do the tasks they are good at doing. For example, they're good at quality control, at routines, very detail oriented. So he went to SAP for a pilot project. It was a really good one. Amazing impact, culture-wise, climate-wise, even productivity-wise. So what happened is SAP committed to increase up to 10% of the workforce being people with the Asperger syndrome. So this changed the whole industry because Microsoft did the same, and then Nokia, etc. So it's a really powerful. Right now, they're in 16 countries, and they're aiming at including more than 1 million people within the autism spectrum. It's a couple of good examples that we have right now. Okay, just before the break, I would like to briefly discuss with you the challenges of those organizations. So my point was they are economically relevant, um, they are creating an impact, but also they struggle and they face a couple of drawbacks. And some of them are endogenous, some of them are exogenous. So I'm more interested personally, and that's why we developed the self-assessment tool on the endogenous ones, meaning what is happening inside the black box, inside those companies, inside those enterprises. What's happening with those organizations that is preventing them, that is hindering them to actually um, becoming either scalable or more impactful or more efficient in the end. So, if you look into management, for example, we have two different tasks that should be performed by a manager: instrumental tasks and behavioral tasks, because we don't work with machines only, we work with people, especially because it's a really labor intensive sector. So if you look into the instrumental tasks, you have here planning, organizing, executing, and controlling. So if you look into it, would you say there's like one task that shouldn't be performed by a manager out of those four? Or on the other hand, you feel like all of them should be performed by an impact manager? What's your take on that? No contributions again. Yes, go ahead, Melise. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like all should be performed, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. By the way, where are you from, Melise?
I'm from France. I'm at the AVIS, the National Competence Center for Social Innovation for France.
Okay, nice, nice. Cool. Are you based in Paris, by the way?
What? Sorry?
If you're based in Paris.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Uh, I'm not sure. All of them should be performed by a manager. Um, and what I think is only those in red should be performed by a manager. So, which is planning, organizing, controlling, not executing, because executing basically it's the object of management, is not a management task. What happens in impact organization is a manager performs all those tasks, which brings efficiency down. Why? And Reid Hoffman, the founder of Netflix, has an interesting statement where he mentions that he he would consider that he was like performing as a manager if he was not needed at his own company. So it's interesting to see. I want to become obsolete. That's my role. And why? If you're executing, basically you have no time to plan, to organize, and to control, because you're drowning, basically, and most likely gonna burn out. And two, because of conflict of interests. Because if you're controlling and executing, you don't have incentives to actually have like an external perspective and a learning perspective from what's happening on the field. So we should start by planning, which is defining goals, the vision, and how to achieve it. Then organizing the resources, which is also a problem because most of the times we do the opposite in our organizations. Like, these are the people that we have today. What are we trying to achieve? Whereas, for example, we need to organize the structure, we need to hire people according to our goals because they are the mean to an end, not the end itself. and then how to control it. Am I achieving those goals? If not, why? Should I reorganize my structure? Should I replan it? Well, replanning it's not the last resource, but it's less flexible in the sense that you bring instability into an organization, and the organization will struggle. So it becomes toxic and not positive. So that's one, you know, doesn't make sense. So it's one of the things that we struggle the most within our sector is we don't have the means to let me write it down because I'm gonna tell you a story again. Um, we we don't have a manager fully committed with management tasks to management tasks. And the story I want to tell you is so you know one of the reasons why this is happening is the way our organizations are funded. So usually, how are like social enterprises funded across Europe? How are they funded? How are they funded in France, in Sweden, in Spain?
Do you
They
mean
are not
in what
funded.
form or in how they're financed? Like, do you mean in cooperative forms and so on, or do you mean how they're financed?
They financed in the sense that who is paying for either their projects, their what they're doing basically, their business.
Yeah, I mean, mostly they are in Sweden. I mean, they're cooperatives. As a bit, if you
Okay,
talk about work integration social enterprises, they are cooperatives, and
not
they are
only,
both
but
mostly, but and they are selling services commercially, and then they are also selling work integration services to public
and
actors.
for example, charities in general, how are they funded in Sweden?
Yeah, charities as like NGOs, and yeah,
Hmm.
we have some old charities. I mean, yeah, they collect money or they get they apply for project funding, but that
For
is mostly
good.
charities, and I would say social enterprises are mostly not. I mean, if you look at businesses, they're not run as charities mostly.
Okay, good. And in France, for example, how does it work?
I I was thinking about it. I think it works mostly like Sweden, from what I heard. To be honest, I'm not sure, so I don't want to say anything wrong.
No, no worries, no worries. Uh, I guess, my guess, according to my experience, is most social enterprises, including charities, NGOs, market-oriented social enterprises, most of them, they rely too much on external funding, such as tenders, donations, for example. That's why in Portugal it's the case, and they rely too much on Portugal Social Innovation, for example. So as we heard, they have been, funding more than almost to 700 entities or projects in the country. But the problem is, this funding it has limitations. For example, if you apply to a tender, what happens is you get money for the operation, right? For the project to operate. The funding, so it doesn't cover overheads, right? What happens is every time the project ends, the funding ends, you need to restart all over again because you don't have surplus to keep on investing in that specific project because overheads were not covered, right? So this creates what the literature calls the starvation cycle. Starvation cycle is entities, they keep on looking for funding and sometimes they divert from their original mission. What the literature also calls pathological mission drift. Okay, so that's one issue. So interestingly, big foundations such as the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Hewlett Foundation, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example, they came together and they wrote a letter to social enterprises saying, "We are sorry because we contributed to the starvation cycle, and we are now committed with the nutrition cycle." What does it mean? It means that we're going to start trusting your mission to fund your overheads to make sure that you are sustainable over time and creating an impact. The only thing that we ask in return is for you to measure your impact and to have a clear mission that that acts as a guardrail of your focus. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, the funding has an influence in the way you manage your organizations and the other way around as well. So one thing that is super important is we have we have to have professional managers allocated to these organizations. And every time we are setting up a business model, we need to take this into account because we need to cover overheads to keep on growing sustainably. Otherwise, most likely, we're going to compromise our future and our future impact. And this means also that I need to look into the behavioral task because a manager is not only about planning, defining objectives, reorganizing, or controlling. It's about communicating properly, communicating what the organization does properly. It's about motivating people and finding new ways of doing so. It's about deciding very efficiently. It's about being a leader, you know, and the leader plays a very important role on two things that I there are two dimensions that, so, you know, these are the sections. Now we're getting into the sections of the self-assessment tool. But on my perspective, alongside with management, there are two organizational dimensions that are lacking, uh, they are not highlighted enough, which are one, leadership, and two, organizational culture. So organizational culture also works as a way to prevent pathological mission drift. So the culture is the way we behave, the values we have as an organization. I'm going to give my own example. So for example, I work for, as I told you, as a professor at Católica Lisbon School of Business and Economics, which is part of the Catholic University. So Católica is named after the Catholic Church, right? So you know, our chancellor is the cardinal in Lisbon. So he appoints the rector, and the rector appoints the deans of each one of the schools. So it's very, you know, we have a clear hierarchy. And it translates into a very, if you want, in the very specific culture. For example, every time we do something, we make sure that what we're gonna do is bulletproof. It has quality. So we have a kind of a risk-averse culture. Why? Because it comes from our um, our sponsors, the Catholic Church itself. So our culture reflects the sponsors' attitude. What I'm trying to say is our culture, it's super important and sometimes neglected. Um, And a culture has the power to transform an organization into a toxic organization or a positive organization. A toxic organization will burn out the employees, will divert from its mission. Whereas, for example, a positive organization is about hope, getting things done together. It's about bonding. It's about achieving results. It's this idea of hope, right? Hope is about me trying to achieve those results and not just wait for things to happen. And leadership is the same, because leadership is like the cornerstone of an organization, and it has effects on management, but also on employees' motivation, retention, but also organizational culture. So that's what's happening right now. Sorry, I forgot to replace the title of the slide, but I will do it before send it to you. Basically, we have a couple of issues. I'm gonna highlight three of them. One is the bone mold disease. So it has to do with the business model. So as you know, most people working for social enterprises, they work a lot, but their productivity is low. That's why, for example, salaries are super low if you compare it to the regular market, because they are not able to monetize their impact. So using our impact as an economic argument will increase our productivity and will make salaries higher. And by doing so, you're going to be able to retain and attract talent. Founder syndrome, so they rely on a small group of people. And sometimes what happens is the profile we need depends on the life cycle stage. And finally, it's about bad governance. So there's no layers in the governance model of those enterprises. For example, I don't have a manager that is accountable for his actions, but then there's a board, and the board has a different role, and the relationship should be relying on transparency, for example, and accountability. This leads to lack of new leaders, lack of talent, organizational rigidity, and self-centered organizations instead of open to impact, community, etc. These problems were the problems that we underlined and the problems we chose to address with the self-assessment tool. My suggestion, if you guys agree, is to break for 15 minutes right now. And then I'm going to guide you through the self-assessment tool that basically relied on every single argument that I've mentioned before. Is it okay for you? Sorry. Does it work for everyone?
Perfect. Yes, thank you so
Okay.
much, Carlos.
So
So we will start at 10:45.
10:45.
Okay.
Lead the new ontology based approach that I've created for social enterprises, impact organizations. So it could be of help, I don't know, up to you. So I have a couple of tools available. And that's it. I think everything that we've discussed is there. Okay, so let's go back to my presentation. Where is it here? So, okay. I'm gonna do it. Let me know if are you able to see my screen? Now I cannot see you. I don't know what I did, but it disappeared from my screen. Let me try it
Yes,
again.
it worked.
Yeah, it's working,
you
but
were
I
seeing,
cannot see you anymore. I don't know why. Okay, maybe if I do this. No, something. Well, anyways, I cannot see you basically. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you a couple of things. One of them is the process we went through, and then the tool itself. So, in order to build this assessment tool, created to in a way address to the problems we discussed on the first half of this workshop, uh, the first thing that we've done was about mapping out what was available out there. So that's a couple of things that we got inspiration from. So when it comes to organizational profiling, for example, we checked the philanthropy classification system, for example, or the self-assessment tool that we developed ourselves at YESH, or the philanthropy framework, which is super useful, or the impact capacity assessment tool from Algorithm, or the organizational mapping tool from the Four Foundations. So there's a couple of things out there that are interesting. I'm just highlighting the most interesting ones. When it comes to assessment tools, there are two that are super that I like particularly. One is the organizational capacity assessment tool. So this basically it was a tool developed by McKinsey for nonprofit organizations. It was super well done, but it disappeared. I think they privatized the tool at McKinsey. So it's not available anymore since I guess 2014 or 2013. So you cannot find it online. Sometimes you can find kind of a screenshots, screenshots of some of the questions, but not the tool itself, because it was an Excel file, super useful again, but not available anymore. And the second one is the performance imperative from a network called Leap of Reason, both focusing on nonprofit organizations. So it was super so insightful to check those tools because we got many ideas from it. Of course, you have others like the Bean Impact Assessment, but it's from a different perspective, or the Core Capacity Assessment tool from the TCC group that I use myself to, for example, assess foundations, especially corporate foundations, or the impact management norms from now Impact Frontiers, I guess, but more focused on impact measurement. So these are some of the tools that we use as benchmarking, as benchmarks, and then I'm gonna go through two of them because I think it's super interesting to see how they structure themselves and what we can learn from them, and then we'll move to ours. So this is the OCAT, the Organizational Capacity Assessment Tool from McKinsey for nonprofits. It has 167 questions. It takes almost 1 hour to get completed. It's focusing on managers, but it has a couple of areas of input, such as the vision, for example, aspiration, they call it, strategy, leadership, people and volunteers, funding, values, which is quite related to culture, organizational culture, and learning and innovation. Then organizational infrastructure and technology, advocacy, which is something that we thought should be part of the of our process, process management and marketing and communication. And then it gives an output on many things, but for example, strengths, capacity development, work on team alignment, and how to improve your performance. Basically, that's so you answer the survey and you get concrete recommendations on how to improve your performance. That's the structure. The second one is the performance imperative from Leap of Reason. It has already as well 168. Actually, they have a manual, a support guide that is publicly available, so you can get it. You can download. I can send it to you as well if you want. But it's super interesting. They have like different circles. At the core, they have the role of leadership, and then how it creates spillovers to the other areas of the organization, such as how people are managed, how programs are designed and aligned with strategies, financial health and sustainability, internal monitoring, for example, in order to create feedback loops, external evaluation, and culture as well. The output is more like a reflection on what your organization is meant to do and how it can improve. So it doesn't give you recommendations, actually. So these were the two sources of inspiration, and I think they are quite complete, even though we thought like we need to do something different. And that's why basically we used the way we built the self assessment tool was around these two objects. One is the innovation potential of solutions. So that's one of the objects of the assessment tool is focus on. Sorry, the this one is focused on organizations. So we are trying to help organizations to assess their potential of innovation and try to improve it. And the second one is projects and its impact potential. So we have two surveys basically and two different outputs that I'm going to show you. Because depending on what are you going to assess, it gives you different questions and different potential outputs, right? So what are the objectives of the tool? Is to have more organizations, projects engaged in process of self-reflection, how they can build more capacity, but also how they can navigate in the system where you have multiple consultancy companies, you have a lot of capacity building programs. What I like, how could they navigate by knowing themselves first? So we needed to be a self-assessment tool in that sense. Two is promoting like internal reflection and discussion as well in order to start prioritizing where should I invest from a strategic point of view. So these were the goals. So as I told you, depending on the assessment object, you can go either for the innovation potential, which is focused on organizations, or the impact potential for impact ventures or projects. So you answer a couple of questions, and then after the tool, like it runs the answers through an algorithm, and basically it gives you two different outputs for organizations: an organizational development plan, and for projects, project development plan. What does it comprehend? It comprehends the assessment results, improvement suggestions, and capacity building recommendations on both. That, of course, will get more informed decisions when it comes to, dig deep into those issues and understand which capacity building programs they should be applying to, what kind of funding they should be looking into, and what kind of consultancy they should be looking for. Basically, that's the rationale behind the tool. So for organizations, this is how we structured. Basically, you have a couple of questions about facts. Most of them are focused on financial indicators. So this means that according to our pilot projects, that we need to increase financial literacy amongst social enterprises, at least in Portugal. Because for them, for example, it's really hard to look into financial statements, such as the balance sheet, for example, and you need to do so, otherwise you won't be able to answer the questions asked. Then you have the assessment itself. And these are the dimensions we identified as key: mission and strategy, governance and management model, economic and impact model and how they lockstep, talent, learning, culture, and innovation, quality of financial information and management. So these are the five core elements of the organizational assessment tool. And these are the outputs. So the first one, it gives you, according to your answers, both factual but also your perception about the questions we are asking. It gives you the life cycle stage. So are you in the idea phase, startup, growth, maturity, or decline, depending? What kind of economic model like are you relying on, and how does it align with your mission and your vision? Then uh, it gives you also the skills you need to develop or gather, management-wise, team-wise, the investor's profile, and it gives you three benchmarks potentials per life cycle stage. And then it gives you life scores per dimension on the five ones that I've mentioned earlier. And sorry, and why this? I'm going backwards. Sorry. And then finally, it gives you the priorities in terms of development per category, also opportunities for improvement, and then support materials. So, for example, according to your goals that the algorithm defines for you, it gives you like capacity building objectives, funding opportunities, and also tools for you to be able to develop your capacity on your own. So basically, that's the structure that we've come to. When it comes to projects, more or less the same idea, but it's a simple process. Less questions, less information needed, especially because one, we assume that either a project is, the seed for the organization, or either is an element of the organization. So you can, as an organization, assess the the umbrella for your project, but you can also assess the projects on their own. So there are these two objects of assessment. What are the assessment, let's say, clusters? So the need, so is there an opportunity? Are you going for a neglected space as a project? What's the business model? And is it coherent with are you actually, what kind of tasks should you perform in order to test your solution if it's not tested yet? What's the revenue model, for example? The management model, ability to mobilize resources, complexity of the solution, learning capacity. Then the impact model, and finally the growth potential. So it has these three dimensions: market size, model replication potential, and critical success factors. And then basically the projects, the outputs are quite similar. So life cycle, stage, economic model, skills to gather and develop, investors profile at this stage. So this investors profile is according to the phase, and then three benchmarks, because it positions your project, your venture within one of those phases. And then according to that phase, it gives you a couple of alternatives in terms of investors profile, but also benchmarks. And then the scores per dimension, for example, they are both diagnostic specific, but also according to the life cycle stage. Um, and finally, it helps you define the priorities. One of the challenges that we had was to start prioritizing, because at the beginning, the self-assessment tool was identifying everything as a priority. So we thought it would be useless to have like 50 priorities. So we should be able to prioritize. So right now we are fine tuning the algorithm to make sure that actually is choosing the priorities according to the needs of that specific organization. Still a work in progress. And then, of course, the support materials. Okay, I'm just gonna stop a bit to make sure that I have everyone on board, or is there any comment or question so far? Yes, Irene, I cannot hear you, I guess.
Because these are not working well. Thank you very much for the presentation. I introduce briefly myself. I'm Irene Ezquerra. I work in a foundation, quite recent foundation called Atelier ITD. I think everything you present was really interesting, but I was asking myself, was wondering how these kind of tools can be used as a learning exercise within organizations, not only to as a like a solitary exercise, but to how to profit of this exercise to organize really interesting conversations within the organizations as a very big exercise of learning for all the teams and all the managers of the organizations. Have you any suggestions on this for us?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, I do. First of all, is like at the end of the tool, you're gonna get a report. Using this report, it triggers discussions within organizations. Of course, it needs like some degree of transparency. If you don't want to share these results with others, with your employees, with the team, it's hard to have an open discussion. The second part of the answer, I'm gonna give it to you in a couple of minutes. Does it sound good? Because it's something tricky, but I need to share our experience during the pilot phase to actually answer your question. Okay. Anyone else, by the way? Or any comment? By the way, we're still like in the beta phase, so getting your, and then I'm gonna tell you. Unfortunately, the tool is still in Portuguese, but there are ways for you to translate it, and I'm gonna try to show it to you. But what I'm trying to say is still in the beta phase. Getting your feedback is super important. Okay. So we are trying to get more and more users so we can actually make sure that we are refining the model. Okay, going back to my presentation. So I'm gonna just show you briefly about like the structure and the content behind the structure. So this is the life cycle, as I told you. So it's gonna position the organizations into one of the life cycle stages, for example. And what does it mean? So if you are a startup, what does it mean to be a startup? If you're in a consolidation phase, what does it mean? Maturity, decline, and renovation. Because sometimes organizations, they go through decline, but then they are able to turn it back. Sometimes they don't. They just run out of business, and that's okay. But it's good to know where you're heading to. So that's the first one, because the model actually it relies too much on the idea of so your within one of those 5 phases. So according to those 5 phases, you need to do something. That's why you have the main goal of the phase and then this description. So it can be, as you mentioned, Irene, it could be like actually a learning tool as well. I need to understand what does it mean to be in the consolidation phase? What's the main goal? How can I progress to a different phase, for example? So that's the first part. The second part is about the financial state. So you know when you're going for the blood test, usually you have marks, right? So for example, I don't know, you should have um, what should you have? I don't understand like anything about financial health, but you should be high on low on cholesterol. But what's the threshold? You know. So we are doing the same with the financial equity and economic ratios. So it's gonna give you those ratios, and then it's gonna compare it with the marks, with the thresholds. For example, liquidity ratio it should be above 0.5. Cash autonomy, it should be you should be able to cover like fixed costs for the next 6 months. So you use benchmarks, of course, to set up those thresholds, but that's same with equity ratios and economic ratios. Why these three ratios? Because financial ratio means like, am I able to cover the costs for the next couple of months? Equity, what's the degree of solvency of the organization? Am I stable over time? And economic ratios, does it make sense economically? So these are three different ratios that we considered, and then the economic models. So we, of course, this is like it's not discrete. Discrete is like you know it's not linear. So you go for it ranges from philanthropic to social enterprise. In the middle, you have the hybrid model, but it positions your business model, and it also describes what does it mean. So you can reflect. So, for example, I rely too much on philanthropy. I want to become more of an hybrid organization. I need to diversify my revenue streams, for example. What should I do? What does it mean? So that's what our plan. Same for the projects, but we make it short because, okay, we have 3 phases that overlap, of course, creation, validation, and dissemination. And then this is relationship between the dimensions and the goals and the phase. For example, here we consider that you're in the creation phase until you test a pilot, for example. You're a validation phase until you consolidate the organization. You move to the dissemination phase every time you start implementing a growth strategy. Okay, well, this is the basically our borders between phases. And it also helps you to define the economic model. But in that case, it might be a direct social business model. What does it mean? So my beneficiary is also the payer, or indirect social business. So I provide services to the beneficiary, but there's someone else paying for it. But it's paying for a value proposition. So it's paying for the service. That's the case of Cafeteria that I mentioned earlier. It's philanthropic, so I'm relying, for example, I'm selling my impact, or I have a mix of all the above, or some of the above. It's an hybrid. We call it the hybrid model. We also describe the economic model. What does it mean? Same as for the organizations. So this is the link, diagnostico de impacto.pt. I'm going to show you in a bit, but basically we have the landing page with some frequently asked questions, the presentation of the self-assessment tool and the partners, and then the self-assessment tool itself. So as you can see here, this is the landing page. These are the frequently asked questions that we gonna keep on updating if everything goes well. And then you start the self-assessment, impact self-assessment. As you can see here, has a question called what type of impact assessment do you intend to conduct? So here you're going to choose either project or organization because it's going to tailor the questions according to the object. And then the entity, you can also describe the entity because it's going to give you a report. The report might describe your entity as well. So you can give it to stakeholders, for example, or a logo if you want your own logo in the final report. So these are the more general questions like organization name, year of starting, organization type, and then you start the survey itself. So for example, strategy, and you have like 2 examples, and then you need to choose, of course, you need to choose the answer that is more, it's closer to what's happening within your organization. So this is how we defined it. And then you have the output. So the output has the structure. So it has a summary of the organization and the assessment, the details, the economic model, and the development plan. So this is how it looks like, right? So within a couple of seconds, you get this report. And this report has, as you can see here, so I did it for Liège in 2024. But you can see here, so we are focusing on the Lisbon metropolitan, no, we are based in the Lisbon metropolitan area. We have an international scope, and we are a small organization. And I can see here, well, it's wrong because it's gonna, I changed the graph, but here you can see I'm in the startup phase. I think yes was more on the maturity or renovation phase, but startup, let's say. And then you can see how your organization is performing overall. So we can see here that, for example, Yes is performing really well when it comes to processes, but it should be improved when it comes to its economic impact, economic model, for example, which is the blue one. And is also very strong when it comes to the management and governance model. So it means that our organization is quite based on processes. When it comes to the economic model, we are a social business. And we are sustainable. It means that according to the ratios, we're sustainable. So that's the if you want, it's like an overview on the report. It's a general summary, as we call it. And then you go into the details. What does it mean to be in this phase, for example, and what kind of organizations are at the similar, a similar phase? And then we're going to go into the details of the self-assessment. For example, where am I here? For example, I'm close to the social business, but what does it mean? And then I'm sustainable, but let's see each one of the indicators. I can compare myself with the thresholds, right? So debt ratio 0, I'm below 1, cool. I have a cash flow autonomy of 7 months is higher than 6, so it's cool. I have a liquidity ratio of 5. I'm above 0.5. Still super nice. Solvency, same. I'm scoring 5. I'm above 0.5. So that's the kind of. So I'm trying to understand. I can understand how my organization is performance from both financial and economic perspective. And finally, then you have the development plan per phase. It recommends you a couple of things, but also then you go into the details of the impact assessment. So it gives you the priorities per area. For example, strategy, partnerships, and growth. It's telling me like it's good to evaluate your key performance indicators and identify the areas of improvement. in this specific area. And it gives me a couple of resources that I can download here. Can you see like the small files here on the right? So I can download a specific tool that's going to help me to achieve this result. That's how it works. And this is true for strategy, partnership, and growth. But you can also go through impact assessment, marketing, communication, fundraising, digitalization of processes and operations, for example. And then there's the annexes where you have all the answers you provided per question. So this is only an example of one of the organizational development plans. These are two examples of tools. So for example, if you want to improve your business model, we created the social value generator. Basically, it's something that you can use to reflect on the business model itself, and then the problem tree if you want to improve your positioning, for example. So you can download basically here. So all these files are different tools. We have more than, I can remember, more than 70 tools that are, that are going to be allocated to your organization according to your answers, your life cycle stage, etc. Okay, so that's another way, Irene, to help organizations to reflect on those areas. So how can I improve? Okay, so the tool is telling me I should be improving in this area. What should I do? How can I do it? Should I go for consultancy? Okay, but first, what can I do on my own internally? So that's why we are providing those tools. Was the idea. And every single tool has the tool itself that you can use autonomously, and then it has like some instructions on how to use it. It was really hard to put all of this together. So I'm going to stop here before moving to the last part, to the last slide, I guess, just to check to check in again and check if you have any questions or yes, Ingrid.
Yes, I think, I think it's great. I can really see that there's a lot of our the work integration social enterprises and many of our clients that would need this. But I'm thinking, like, what is the response? Like, how is it used? And because it seems like, I believe many that we work with have a pretty low capacity in general. And as you say, there's really a great need of financial literacy, and we have very limited resources for this. So what, like, I think you have come much longer in building a support structure and like capacity building with accelerators and incubators for social innovation and such, which we do not have so well established in Sweden. So I'm just thinking, what is then the next step? Because like this, often they also are very much aware of like their limited capacity and struggles they have, even though I understand this kind of pinpoints what they need to put focus on. But what is then available as support? Because otherwise it kind of creates frustration, and like, since you already are very like limited in resources and capacity, and maybe not have the, as you say, you can maybe identify what can we do internally and what do we need external help with. But I guess here the good thing is, like, if you have, you can also connect them then with some kind of capacity building support, because if you don't have that, it can cause a lot of frustration. I just, my spontaneous thinking about this. Thank you.
And you are 100% right. And I'm going to tell you also some of the issues we faced during the pilot phase, because we ran a pilot phase in different areas in Portugal, so north, center, and south of the country. And we tested it out with multiple organizations. We got different feedbacks on the tool, but I'll get there in a bit. A couple of things that we faced ourselves. First is the literacy level, management-wise, financial-wise. most of these organizations, they actually struggle when it comes to simple things such as um, reading, not even understanding, but reading a financial statement, right? So P&L, balance sheet, it's really hard for them to, and for me, it was shocking, to be honest. That's the first thing. The third thing is, um, alongside with the Portugal Social Innovation, we also found a different way of using this tool, which was to help um, ecosystem builders, accelerators, incubators, all the infrastructure to start using the tool, because they do have the knowledge to help them out in order to avoid frustration. I don't know how to read a financial statement, even though, like, we are trying to use the same kind of jargon that a regular financial statement uses, so we can, we can make their life easier. But even though it was almost impossible, so what we were trying to do is to build capacity on accelerators, but also consultants, so they can use it to help them out, to help those organizations out. And I think it worked decently. Um, and another thing that I was going to the feedback that we got was like, it is overwhelming to get, in fact, overwhelming to get all this information at once during the pilot phase. Even though we have all the, tools, all this information that the tool comprehends, for us is overwhelming. So we don't know what to do first, and we jump directly into consultancy without even trying to do internal reflection. So there's a step that is still missing, which is, so if we want this tool to work as a self-assessment tool and trigger internal discussions, like, it's not, I don't know, maybe we need to actually have a degree of literacy before, like some workshops on management, entrepreneurship, etc. Because that's what we also realized. For those that, for example, attended ES workshops before using the tool, their literacy level was way higher. So a simple workshop, a 2 days workshop, for example, they were able to actually understand the jargon. And another thing that I would like to share with you, which is actually connect with my last slide before also opening for more discussion, is the bias of the tool. So if you see, this is actually a graph that results from an organization using the tool. So if you look into the blue web, comes from the answers provided by the organization's leadership. So basically, that's how it looks, right? And the red one is from myself. So basically, I look into the questions, I answer the questions according to the what I've witnessed, but also according to all the evidence submitted by the organization. And you can see the difference between the two, right? Just to see your faces. Can you see the difference, right? Between the two. What does it show, in fact, this difference between these two perspectives? The leadership of the organization and an external consultant. What do you think? Who's more optimistic?
Can you show us again?
Yes, I will. Look. So this is the organization, the blue one. This is the consultant, the red one. Who's more optimistic?
The organization, no?
The organization, the leadership of the organization. Because, and then we did another experience. We asked the team to answer, and they were super pessimistic. What we're trying to do now is to have multi-respondents. So, for example, goes back to Eren's question. That's my last part of your answer, which is you can open the survey to other people, other stakeholders, and our experience shows that opening up to more people converges to the perspective of an independent party, a third party, an external third party that is assessing, relying on evidence, which is interesting. But this feature is not available yet. But that's one of the things that we have planned to do is to have the multi, of course, like as an additional respondent. You're not gonna answer the same questions all over again, meaning facts of the organization, financial statement, financial information, equity information, economic information, description of the organization. Like you're just gonna answer the questions related to the core dimensions of the model. So that's our solution for this specific problem. Anyways, that's all I had for today. So I'm still open for discussion, but I'll leave it up to you. Comments, questions, ideas that you want to share as well. Up to you. Ingrid, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Um, I think this is I think this could be very useful for those we work with. Although I still see this challenge of like that we have too little
I know.
like capacity building support for them. So I'm curious to know if like you also have like in addition to like is there like digital tools for like financial literacy that has been developed through like the accelerators or incubators for social innovation? Is there like financial literacy tools that are like developed to be relevant for the social enterprises and social economy sector? That would be of very high interest, because what we see is like, yeah, there are like templates and so on developed by like regular businesses, by the support structure for financing of regular businesses in Sweden, but those are not so useful or relevant for this type of social enterprises and so on that we work with. So like here we see like we're doing some work, we're doing like webinars and trainings like in the capacity we have, but we see there's a lot more needed. So this would be very useful if you have examples, if you have examples of how the social innovation incubators, if they have digital tools they work with that could then you do the assessment and then you could like continue on your own as well, and not only be dependent, because like most would not afford like consultants and so on. So like if you have such examples, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Sure. I'm gonna share something with you. Still is in Portuguese, unfortunately, but I'm gonna explain it to you really quickly, and then So this is the program run by, it's not an incubator, it's a capacity building organization. It's a foundation, actually. It's the foundation that was actually created by the founder of McKinsey in Portugal, Manel Violante. And they have a program called Miles. And basically, this program, it's fully online, and it's super low cost, and it's tailored to the organization. For example, I can do it in 1 year, I can do it in 3 months, depending on my availability and the resources I want to put into it. And using AI, what they do is they customize the goals according to your needs. So what we're trying to do now is to plug in this tool into this program, so that they can have the assessment. It will lead, like, to the objectives throughout the program. Because it's AI powered, it's super cheap. They can, do a couple of exercises while learning and reflecting within the team. They submit, they get feedback from mentors, and then they unlock, as they progress, they unlock consultancies, for example. So according to your commitment, for example, you also unlock new resources, which is a gamified way for you to have incentives to keep on progressing. So it's interesting. So that's one of the things that is happening. Um, but there's a long way to go still when it comes to digitalizing, for example, all this capacity building processes. But that's a good example. This one is a good example. Anyone else?
Um, if there is no other question, I can also share that we use this tool in our call for proposals for capacity building, and we gave more points if the entities would use this tool, but we allowed that they did the diagnosis of their capacity needs using other tools if they wanted. But just to say that it was also a strategy to guide them for this tool, and hoping that they would converge with use of this tool to know their, in this case, their capacity building needs. I think that Miley's enter again. She had a comment, maybe not.
Yes, sorry, I had a network issue. I don't know why I was disconnected. I was wondering, like Ingrid, I think this tool would be very useful for some of the organization we're working with. But I don't know, since there is this literacy problem, do you think we should, like, it's relevant to still share it like now with some organizations we think are enough mature maybe to answer it? Or do you think we should share it to like all the organization we're working with? Or do you think we should select on like the maturity type, or I don't know, something?
First of all, there are a couple of things. First of all, there's some work to be done on our side, which is to translate the tool before you start sharing it. Otherwise, you can
Okay.
use a Google Translator, but
Okay.
there's a couple of flaws. So there's a work we need to do before sharing it with you. The second thing I would say is to run a couple of pilots. You know what I mean? Maybe one of the things that you can do is share it with a group of, like, controlling how we're going to share it with a group of people that you think, like, this group has no literacy, and then a group that has a lot of literacy, to check the differences and what you
Okay.
can do. And or to do an experience, which is you can use our Social Entrepreneurs Guide to Changing the World, run a workshop with those, and then at the end ask them to fill out the form. And my guess is they're gonna understand way better the questions that are asked. So there are multiple ways for you just to get a a glimpse of how it can work in your context. These are my suggestions.
Okay, thank you very much.
And by the way, I think in France there's a couple of organizations that could be mobilized. For example, Moves, right? Move.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I'll
Move
look it
is
up.
the
Like
actually
how do
you need
you
to
write it?
MOUVES. Move. So it's the largest network for social entrepreneurs in France. It's really they're really good. One of the best in Europe. So I think you should look into it. And then there's a network of incubators, social incubators.
But for this, I can also ask my team. Like I know we have a lot of potential
Okay.
persons that could help us. So, but yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking about the incubators in France. Sorry, now I'm obsessing. That's why. Makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I'll look it up too.
It's a network of incubators in France. La Ruche. It's also a social incubator. Then, of course, you have Station F. You have a couple of social enterprises. That's
Yeah.
Station F.
Yeah, we
The
know some of them quite well. So.
Yeah, or the Fondation de France,
Mhm.
which is an interesting model that we don't have in Portugal, but we would love to, and that you could partner with as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think that Alicia is writing something in our chat.
Is she?
Yes, I was
Okay,
writing
okay.
a long thing, but I
Okay.
can't tell you. Yes, I was writing that I had to join another meeting, but I think this is a great tool. It's fantastic. Even it can be adapted to different profiles of social companies, social enterprises. So as far as it's translated into English, please let us know, as we can share it in our network, the European Network of Innovation for Inclusion. Their members are like, some of them are like very initial social economy enterprises, and they are dealing with some issues to survive, perhaps, or not. So this can be very useful for them. And that's it. So thank you for the workshop. Now I
Thank
can
you,
delete the
Alicia, for
message.
attending. Thank you for attending.
And thank you for your work. So when is foreseen to be translated into English?
We don't know yet, but we'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you. In any
Thank you.
case, I will check it carefully because I'm interested in the part of innovation. I will check it, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much,
I have to
Alicia.
leave. Thank you. Bye.
So no more comments? So I think that it is the end of the workshop. Thank you all for your presence, contribution, and engagement throughout today's session. I want to extend a special thank you to Carlos Azevedo and to IES Social Business School for leading this workshop and for the continuous collaboration in developing and improving this diagnostic tool. A heartfelt thank you as well to all participants for your openness and sharing experience, ideas, challenges. It is this dialogue that strengthens not only individual organizations, but the entire European social innovation ecosystem. And as we move forward in the BIRDS project, your insights will enrich the collective knowledge we are building across Portugal, France, Spain, and Sweden, helping us shape practical tools and policies that support stronger, more resilient, and impactful mission-driven organizations. So we hope you live today with new reflections, new inspirations, and perhaps new connections to take with you in your work. Thank you once again, and we look forward to continue this journey together. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.